for Jill and John.
Okay, it's 6:30, and this is the Board of Finance workshop for February 26th and 25th. 25th. First of all, we'll start off with Pledge of Allegiance, okay? Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first one on our agenda is going to be the library, and a couple of little rules. You can stand up there. Go ahead, Chris. I just like everybody to go through the chair, and if you got any questions, and they need to be answered by anybody, okay? That's number one. So try to keep it orderly and keep it on time. Okay, you're on.
Yeah. Apologize for bringing water up here. My voice has been going a little bit with the weather in the winter, so. I do have a few handouts.
Page you got.
Trying to answer some of your questions in advance.
Thank you. Just got it today.
So,
So ready because he was there when I was.
Couldn't find a parking space.
Please come.
all right.
Without.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm starting with the library budget. The biggest change being that I am asking for a substantial increase in our building maintenance account due to failing building systems that are over 40 years old and the amount we've had to spend on repairs already this fiscal year. And thank you for the extra funds to actually have them work. Both the staff and the public greatly appreciate the heat. So we're trying to get ahead of that next year so we don't need to come in and ask for money up front. Other than that, a couple small changes, and mostly we're hoping to continue the same level of services, possibly adding some new ones, hoping to enhance our programs, enhance our outreach. Those are our main goals with the library. Over at the Barnes, as I'm sure you know, we're going through a bit of a staffing transition there as well. We're going to be looking to offer more educational opportunities to the community, more events, and more ways to bring Southington's history to the community. I was asked to highlight a few of our services. So first in there, you actually have a copy of a bookmark, which has our brand new logo on it, just debuted at the Healthy Family Fun Fest this weekend. So we're very excited about that, and we're using that to get the word out about our different services around town. It features the library as the world, as an entrance to the world through the apple that is Southington. And it features Mr. Bear and his friend. Mr. Bear is a greeter of our children's department, which is, of course, right near the main door that people use. So he's sort of been the greeter to the whole community for years. Next, coming up this month, it's our 15th annual Southington Reads, which is, it's also on a bookmark, a great program where we bring in close to 500 community members. Thanks to the Calvin East Foundation, we're able to hold it at the AquaTurf Club. This year we've got Spencer Quinn coming in. He's award-winning under his real name. Spencer Quinn is a pseudonym. So we're excited about that, and there are still a few slots open if you want to join us. One of the biggest things, and this is a new service that we offered in the last year, is our Memory Cafe. That's something that Liz Schubert has been spearheading. She's very active in the Dementia Friendly Southington group. And she was the first person to bring a memory cafe to a public library in the state of Connecticut. And she'll be speaking about that later this spring at the Connecticut Library Association. It's a great way to reach all members of our community, and it's a great way to provide additional resources both to people undergoing cognitive change and to their loved ones and caregivers. There's always a lot going on in the children's room, so there's a copy of the Kids Connection, all the events in the children's department for the next 2 months. Quite a few fun ones there. There's even a tie-in to our Southington Reads program with an escape room based on another novel. And then I wanted to highlight our museum passes, which are, most of them can be printed or downloaded straight to your phone, and they allow you to go to a museum at a discounted or free rate if we subscribe to that. So that is a great resource that we're happy to provide to the community. I have also included in your packet a document that we've put together on the last year and a half, roughly, of accomplishments by department within the library, things that we've done, things that we've been working on from our goals. And, you know, while the daily services mostly remain the same, sometimes we're able to enhance them and add to them. It shows that we really are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, both in adding new museums, in creating new collections, such as the memory kits or the vinyl records collections, some of the newer ones, we have developmental toys. We're working, last year I believe I talked about the maker kits, which taught different skills to teenagers, such as sewing or coding, things like that. So mostly it's a focus on how we've been evaluating the library and how we're hoping to continue making it better. Speaking of making it better, and I kind of was prepared to spend the majority of my time on this. As many of you know, we are looking towards a pretty substantial building project to enhance the Southington Public Library. It is something that is, and I hate to say it, a little bit overdue. The building was built in 1974 and has undergone no major changes since that time. The median age of library construction in the state of Connecticut is in the 1990s, so we're a little bit behind on that. But most importantly, and regardless of trying to compare ourselves, we're not meeting our population's current needs. I go back and forth to this. We're not ADA compliant. We're not fully accessible to our community. There are areas that do not meet fire code. Our mechanical systems are failing. We are, I believe, and Mark will correct me, I think the last building on the Southington Plan of Conservation and Development that is still marked to not meet the needs in 2026.
And the town hall, but yes, you're at about.
Oh, and the town hall. Sorry. Should have looked around.
Beat me to it.
So that's 2026. I'm saying we don't meet those needs now, and we haven't in quite some time. So we need to fix our library. I've got a great library board, the executive board of which is sitting behind me tonight, who have been helping me in trying to get the message out about what we're working with in that building and what we could be doing to enhance our services if we were given adequate space. First just to touch on, everyone says, oh, well, who's still using the library? Well, last year, over 200,000 people walked through our doors. We serve all Southington residents, whether they're infants, senior citizens, or anywhere in the middle. We are a space you can go in free, sit, stay as long as you like, have access to educational, recreational, all sorts of materials. Last year, over 380,000 items were borrowed. And in terms of digital, because we all know the trend, is headed towards streaming. However, our digital circulation is still under 9%. It is still very, very small. And while it's growing very, very slowly. People still come in, they want the physical item in their hand. There are 19,272 residents with library cards. And that number may seem a little low, but if you think about the number of people in town who are children, I know many people come in and it's easier, rather than giving their small children library cards, they keep one for the family because that way they can keep track of how many items are out. So a better way to look at it is households, and we're well over 60% of households in Southington with library cards. We did 535 events and outreach visits. We reached 4,661 attendees. And in terms of what our staff do, last year they answered over 54,000 reference questions. What are some examples of those reference questions? It could be, my teacher was reading this book in school. It was really great. I don't know the name. Here's a little bit about the main character or the plot. Can you help me find it? We also have gotten requests to go into our local history room and find photos of Southington history. I believe some of them are going to actually be showcased that we were able to find for them from our collection in the Longhorn restaurant that they're opening up down on West Street. So things like that. We're very active. We're trying to help people. There's someone who's trying to find an obituary for a relative that they're not local and they couldn't get access to the papers. Because not everyone uses the internet the way some of us do. So our staff is very busy trying to help all members of the community that way. Back to our building project. What steps have we taken? We have reached out, and we have an architect on board right now, Jeffrey Hoover from Tepe Architects out of Boston. He has been working with myself, with the library board, with our planning committee, and with my staff to talk about what we see as the needs from the community. And he's also reached out to the community themselves. He did a survey back in November and received, maybe a little earlier than that, 1,311 different responses with over 2,500 narrative comments that he went through trying to, asking people, what do you like about this library? What don't you like about this library? Why are you going somewhere else? What do you want in our library of the future? We went through those, and the top 4 things people want are ADA access. That includes room in between the stacks for people to fit their wheelchairs, because there isn't. It includes being able to use the bathrooms, because not all of them are accessible, and some of them are almost impossible to get into. And it includes our elevator, which if you're in a standard wheelchair, not a mechanized one, and not if you have a double stroller, which some people do, with a regular wheelchair, you have about this much clearance on each side of your hands when you're trying to go in. How do I know that? I borrowed a wheelchair and I tested it. It is not up to standards. So the next thing that people were concerned about is the noise level. There's no acoustic separation in the building. We're trying to offer everything we can to the community in a building built in 1974 for a different type of library service. We've moved less from just being a repository of books, which we still are and will always be, but we are a gateway to information, and sometimes that's through books, and sometimes that's through databases, and sometimes that's through bringing community members together so that they can share what they know and learn from each other. So we are a community place, and people need those spaces to meet. And when they come in and they meet, it gets noisy. And that's okay, but we don't have a quiet study room, which is another service we should have. Or I should say we do have one, but in order to provide airflow to it, it only has 3 walls, so it's not exactly quiet. The next one is a bigger children's area. Right now, it is very small. It's very tight. I have a picture I like to show people. It's looking down from the mezzanine, and it shows a line at the children's desk, someone browsing a book, and a couple people sitting at the tables that are right as you're walking through. There's no way to get around them. There are no aisles. So children and libraries, they need the ability to have access to early literacy skills, and that is through developmental play, that is through connecting with adults such as librarians and with their family or the caregivers who bring them in. And right now they don't have that space. The last item that was of importance to the community were meeting spaces. So that is our program room, which down in the basement seats 60 people, 40 if you introduce tables. So anytime we have a large program, we disrupt library services to the entire building, because again, no acoustic separation. And that's where we do it. So for instance, right now, or very shortly, Dr. Yaya's Dirty Rice Review, which is our traditional Mardi Gras event at the library, is something that's requested. It's a band. They will be playing in the cafe area, which is right by those big windows at the intersection of Meriden Ave and Main Street. And while they're going to draw close to 100 people, no one else is going to get much studying or any quiet time in the library tonight. But it also But meeting spaces also involve smaller spaces, such as people who come in to tutor, or people who want to work on group projects for school, or local business people who want to have a meeting. Another example I like is people that need privacy. I get phone calls from alumni who have to do college interviews with local applicants. Well, they want to do it in an enclosed space for privacy, but we can't offer that. And that's something that we should be able to offer because we are that free resource. So you've taken that information, those are some examples of what Jeff's collected, and we've taken that and he's created a detailed building program. It's a 54-page document that talks about every single area in the library from the entryway down to the each specific seating room in the children's department by age group and what we're supposed to be doing in there. So it talks about the functions of that space, such as people will gather for developmental play. People will meet to collaborate on a project. People will meet for quiet study. People will come in and browse our new books. It looks at those functions, and then it takes it a step further and says, what are the goals? Well, in our new book area, we want people to have easy access to the newest titles so they don't get frustrated, so that our circulation goes up, so that people can continue improving their literacy and learning skills. He then took that building program and turned it into some early sketches. And some of those sketches are in your packets today. Those are the sketches presented at the January 23rd community meeting. They are a little bit different from what the planning committee is currently working on at this point. Things are evolving. We're taking feedback. We're taking feedback that we got from that meeting. And we're working on something that we can recommend or go to the council and present. However, what's important is the concepts behind those spaces aren't going to change. We are looking to present a library of the future with expanded space for children, a dedicated storytime room, enhanced space for teens, acoustic separation, that means walling in or glassing in some of those areas, a silent reading room, a variety of reading and gathering spaces, small meeting or group study rooms, a conference room, a large programmer room, enhanced local history, providing more prominence to our Friends Bookstore, which, by the way, they do donate over $20,000 each year to help our services and programs happen. So we're very grateful to them. And it will also include, of course, higher efficiency heating and cooling systems and other things that were important to the community. So we presented those two plans. I do have a brief number. We have, because we asked people what they preferred, and 61.5% preferred new construction. Some people wanted to keep the building where it was in the hub by Darrenowski and the Historical Society, but a lot of other people said they're not interested in the addition renovation. Too much old material. Don't cut corners. Start from scratch. We need to have the newest and best. Well, we don't need the newest and best, but what we need is something that everyone in our community can access equally, equal access to our resources and services. So that is really what we're trying to put forward through all of these plans. I did not bring a watch up here, and I don't want to go over my time, and I'm assuming that there's going to be some questions, so.
Clock on the wall.
A clock on the wall. Okay. Well, I'm not doing too bad then. But I would like to make sure that all of you have a chance to ask me questions. I've also included a little quick facts flyer. You might have gotten one of those before. It talks about some of what we're trying to do from the beginning of the project. And I also want to highlight one more document in your packet. It looks like this, like a little bit of a slideshow. I picked some local towns, both some local towns that our committees have talked about, libraries most used by Southington residents. We know that from the survey Jeff did, and the libraries that I've been told the town uses frequently for comparison. And I looked at both their building and some of their services. So I tried comparing Southington to some of those things. That was another question, was how do we evaluate what we're doing to make sure we're meeting the needs. So the Connecticut State Library puts together a document every year using the annual reports from all the public libraries in Connecticut. So it shows where we fall within those towns. Going to the third page, it talks about computer usage, and we're kind of low compared to some of the others, or around average, but if you do a comparison, how many computers we have compared to per 1,000 of the population, per 1,000 residents, we're the lowest down there. So it's not really surprising that we're low because we can't offer, we could be much higher. We certainly know that those computers do fill up at certain times a day. If you look at our services, particularly our programs, again, we're doing okay, but we're not great. But if you think about, we have one meeting room to fit all our programs for children's, adults, teens, fit in my board meetings, fit in, sometimes the ECCS comes in and uses the room, all types of those things. Well, of course we're running out of space because we can only fit so many people in and we can only have so many meetings while we're open. So it goes on like that for a little bit. But the next thing I want to show is there's a group of charts that look a little bit like this. And what I did is I looked at some of those libraries that have renovated, expanded, or had otherwise a building project of late, and you can find out more about those. It's on page 4. On page 4, yeah. Or at the very end, when they had those building projects. And I'm looking at a 10-year period, and I set year 5 as the year of construction. So we're looking at 5 years before a building project and the 5 years after. And if you look at it, the trends go up. After a building project, circulation increases because people can access the resources. They want to come into the building. Annual visits increase because there's space for them to be, there's space for them to come in, and there's services for them. Programs jump on almost every one of those building projects because there's the space, there's the resources, and that correlates to attendance. Collection size, it does increase, but very, very slowly because that's not the primary focus of what we're doing. We're trying to make space for people. And then if you go to the last page, it does talk about when those projects were and whether or not they were addition, remodel. Some of the ones that you see that are a little bit more stagnant were more code compliance. And when you do a project that's more code compliance, you're not adding space for people. So that would make sense that those numbers don't really jump. So thank you again, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll start.
You brought up two good points
Yes.
with the library. You go to the library to study, or or students might want to go there to do a group project to gather.
Sure.
And based on my experience, I wouldn't go to the Southern Library for that because years ago when I was trying to study for exams, there's no quiet. There's no place to hide in the Southington or quiet. I'd go to the Plainville library, or my kids. Both my kids had tutors, and we're like, where can they go and meet? Can't do it at the library. You got to go to the tutor's house. So it's just, it's that library lacks those points you were mentioning.
It does, and those are basic essential services that we should be able to.
Right, that's what you think. That's the benefit of library, for those purposes that we couldn't even think twice of going there because Southern Library doesn't offer the seating, or it's like you said, it's noisy. There's no private areas. You can't go there to tutor because you can't talk. You're not supposed to talk, at least. So.
Well, no. The role of the
It's
library
hard, but
has
there's
changed.
a lot of noise, though. You don't want that. Other people don't want that. It's like you don't want to.
It's sort of a balance.
Be rude to other people.
I think if you go into a lot of libraries now, you're going to notice that the volume is increasing.
It is higher.
Southington's library is very high, again, because of lack of acoustic supervision or separation. You can sit over in the
But
adult
just the
area
rooms.
studying.
There's the
Yeah.
seating. There's no places.
No, there isn't. There isn't.
That's the big
Yeah.
negative towards that library, I think.
I understand completely. I would love to offer a building to our community that
Yeah.
can offer those services.
Sue?
On Kevin's point, I do go there to tutor, and I do go to a private home to tutor. The private home, the student cannot concentrate at the library, so I go to the private home. The other ones that I do at the library, I'm able to focus them more because they're adults. However, there are constantly people walking by. There are students from college working in small groups trying to study or work together. If they're collaborating, we move to another place where there's not as many people because we are going to be talking because we're learning English. When they're single people studying, they usually are wearing headphones to try to block out the noise. When the children's groups are meeting when we're studying, it's so distracting. I mean, I love the kids, and they should be there, and I'm thankful they're there, but it's just so very distracting. I'd like to see the expanded space. I've been there on crutches, I've been there on wheelchairs, and you just cannot get around. I'm going to be on crutches again in a few weeks, and I'm going to pack up, fill up before I get this procedure done again, because I know how, I was there last week, I got 4 books, they're done already, I was there again today. And, you just need to make it accessible for all of us. And I'm not just thinking of me, I'm thinking for the ones who can't reach up high. And thankfully, you have staff people who are always willing to help. They are so wonderful all the time, best people.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. And as much as they are willing to help, that is not equal access.
Good, Sue?
Yes, thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, I'll start with a question on the budget itself.
Yes.
You got $70,000 for HVAC issues, right? Maintenance issues, mostly to do with the HVAC, I
Can
think.
you speak a little louder, please, Tony?
Yeah, sorry. That's less than this year.
It is.
Is there a reason for that? Because the assumption was, because what we've seen this year is that those costs would increase. They wouldn't go down.
Wishful thinking?
Part of it is wishful thinking, and I'm, going to admit some superstition and knock here, that we replaced a couple of big items this year that hopefully,
Okay.
we're not going to have to replace those particular items again, and, that there'll be enough of a Band-Aid for a little while.
Yeah, do we have what happens if the worst happens? Because obviously nothing's going to happen for at least a year for the library. What's the worst case scenario that we would end up having to pay, a serious sum of money?
What's the worst?
What's the worst case scenario for that HVAC system that would mean that Southington would have to pay a real serious amount of money to fix it?
Oh, the pipes. The pipes
Okay.
would go. They would give out. Many of them are not well supported. There's a couple of places in the building where literally paracord is tying them to a nearby object so that they have a little bit more stability. So as the water rushes through, they rattle and they go through the concrete. So you can't get at all of the places that there's problems to fix. So that's one worst case. The second worst case is that we have sump pumps going in the basement 24 hours a day. We have freshwater ones, and we also have sewage sump pumps. And if the freshwater pumps were to fail, we do have an alarm on it, but if we couldn't get it repaired in time, it would go into the other one. That's another...
Mark, do we have enough contingency?
We have $850,000 in contingency, and we
I'd
have
assume
about
that's enough.
$22 million in undated fund balance. But yeah, we don't want to go in that direction.
Right, I get you. Okay, a question on the library.
Yes.
13.9 million is in the capital plan, which is, an assumption right now. What would that give us? I mean, you talked about, the new construction, but we have 21,000 square feet right now, correct?
Correct.
And what would that give us above and beyond what we have right now?
I think if I may, because I think it's maybe premature to
Please.
answer the question.
Absolutely.
Is the fact that the town council is working closely with the library board. We're waiting for schematic designs based upon that number. That number will be reviewed by the town council, but at this moment, to put Christie on the spot to see what that's going to look like is premature.
Okay, so no sense of square footage as yet. Okay.
Well, it's fair to say that the square footage number is in the $500 category. So
Okay.
that'll give
All
you
right.
off
Yeah,
the
I
top
guess
of your
I
head
did.
and talk
Yeah.
about that.
Okay, if we go ahead with a new library, would it increase the operating costs for the library in any way? I mean, we have 15, 16 people already, correct? Would we need any more to...
I'm optimistic that with the right design, we can make do with what we have, or at worst case, and this is in a teen area that we want to wall off again, because to Sue's point, everyone deserves to be there, and they deserve to do what they need to do at the library, but they can't be disrupting everyone else. We might need to put a little bit of supervision in there.
Okay.
But again, I'm talking about a few, or even adding to one of our existing part-timers, just a few hours. In terms of other things, I think that we can be very creative in ways to keep that down. And of course, we're going to expect that there are some changes to our heating and cooling costs, such as not running space heaters all day.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Yeah, last is more of a comment than anything else. On the on the bond view that Amelia put together,
Yes.
it does show that we can accommodate 13.9 if it transpires the way people think it will. But it will go up. Bonding will go up. $1 million every year or so for 2 or 3 years, which is a quarter of a mill rate point at this point in time. So the point I'm just trying to make is not to do with you, it's just to everybody that we need to be conscious of that and essentially keep our finances in check so that we can afford that. So, but thanks, appreciate it.
Sure.
Ed, I have a couple other questions.
Go ahead, Sue.
A couple questions on the barns.
Yes.
With the retirement of Marisa Kondo, and thank her for her work,
Today was
regular
one.
wages are anticipated to stay the same? A new curator would come in and get the same salary that she did?
It's a union position at a specific grade level, so.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell me why the temporary and seasonal wages, the overtime pay went up or is projected to go up so significantly?
Certainly. We are trying to create an environment where there's more staff within the museum during operating hours and to cover, people's approved paid time off or sick leave. And in order to ensure that we have that time, one of the things that we found would be simple to take off their plate would be to get another staff member or someone else to do the mowing for the museum, because that's several hours a week in the summer. So most of that money goes into that. I did do some calculations based on the current contract that we have at the library, comparing what we pay for other types of groundwork with them in comparison to the size of the library's lawn versus that lawn, or the size of the driveway versus that driveway to come with that, and it's definitely cheaper than contracting out.
So that's basically, in the overtime, it's basically for the lawn care?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tony, you good?
Mark, just an information
Go
question.
ahead.
So if we were to build a library, is it very similar to the schools where we apply for a grant from the state and you might get like 40%?
No. No. The most you can hope for from the state would be $1 million, and the $1 million is tagged to certain type of construction, whether it be a LEEDs building or whatever. You take some percentages off, and I know that the council has been working closely with George Simowitz's office to see what kind of square footage is necessary for it too. So the $1 million is the most you can get. It's not. I think we're still at 52% for school construction. It's nothing like that.
Okay.
We are planning to apply for that grant. The application is due in by September. Of course, we won't hear until close to
Right.
the end of November, but we are hoping to apply, or planning to apply.
Mark, you all set?
I'm all set. I should have said in the beginning, like I normally do. Obviously, all the departments that come in front of you, I say that sat down, myself and Amelia sat down with every one of them, and there isn't a budget you're going to see that we are not proud of. So we'll be happy to answer any of your questions that the department head can't answer. But once again, this is Christie's third budget,
Second.
second budget.
That's all, wow.
So anyway, obviously she did a great job.
Right. Yeah, I want to compliment you for having such a
Just a,
fiscally responsible budget, only 1% increase, and it's really for maintenance.
I know Ed usually asks the question for me. As you know, we have union contracts all the time. This particular cycle, we still have the rank and file, which is all the staff employees at the town hall, the library, et cetera, plus our supervisors. So when you look at those numbers for salaries, those do not include the anticipated salary increases. That's somewhere else in the budget.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions because I sit on the planning board and I've learned an awful lot. Not that I'm unfamiliar, but I'll give my time. There's about 10 minutes left in the time. Is anybody from the library board that want to speak about? Not hearing any. Chrissy, nice presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
for having me here
Thank you.
today.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, next up is, I got to call him Lou Perillo, economic person. Done a great job right here, and
Thank you,
seen
Mr.
it
Chairman.
myself, so we'll let you go at it. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Lou Perillo, the town's Economic Development Director. Our office consists of Seal Kelly, who does a remarkable job, and myself. Basically, what we are tasked to do is assist with the commercial and industrial development. We assist property owners, business owners with renting and developing their properties. We also assist people through the development process, which gets more difficult over time. So to have that facilitation has been of a major benefit for the town. Our office also facilitates the SEED and Economic Development Strike Committee. SEED is the Southington Enterprise and Economic Development Committee. It's a state statute committee that oversees and facilitates the state portion of the enterprise zone, specifically tax abatements for commercial and manufacturers. So we work with the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, and we assist the applicants, especially when you get into standard industrial classification codes and North American industrial classification codes to arrive at the benefits. The Economic Strike Committee, it's basically a liaison between developers and my office with the town council. It's basically, the purpose is to disseminate information, to vet issues, and to provide potential business development opportunities a quick, low-cost initial response. The committee is to react in a bipartisan manner with the town's best business development in mind, to take information back to the council and the finance board so there are no surprises. This is a truly effective committee. What we've learned through the years is developers no longer want to fight. They are looking for either a quick no or what has to be done so they can measure whether it's worthwhile to come into a community. Some of the successes with that have been the quantum biopower. The things that are coming down in the development aren't in our regulations. Anaerobic digestion facilities, aerobic digestion facilities, axe throwing, things along that nature. But when you get into the bigger avenues like the green initiatives, that was something that was very well vetted within our community. You get a great education and then a better understanding. So someone who's going to invest $10 million in your community doesn't want to spend the money on civil engineering and all the costs associated with coming up with a plan without having an idea whether or not they're going to be successful. We facilitate complaints. Every once in a while you get a complaint regarding the development process, and we work towards an efficient, effective communication to get to compliance with our regulations. We write grants. Our office also assists with the health department in issuing licenses. We have an ordinance where if someone is delinquent in either sewer or tax bill, they don't have to, the health department doesn't have to renew their license, or sometimes a building permit doesn't have to get issued. We try to keep that business open by facilitating a very short tax payment plan or repayment plan to keep them going. And that's been very effective. We're actively looking to do another industrial park. It's very challenging because we don't control any of the land. We don't control pricing. Some of our land has topography issues, easement issues, and wetland issues. So we're trying to be as feasible and as possible in creating that. And I got to tell you, our engineering department, Wetland Commission, and Wetlands has really been wonderful in helping us with that, especially with potential uses and costs. So that can't be understated. Sometimes what we don't do also has an impact. So for example, when a developer wants to tear down a building or change an industrial zone, we don't make the decision. We provide the information to challenge what they want to do. So when Super Walmart wanted to come to the Pratt & Whitney facility because the developer could make $6 or $8 million, we have the problem, what do you do with the existing Walmart that they're going to leave dark? What do you do with the congestion that's going to be north of 84? And you look at the town from an economic development perspective holistically. What's in the best interest, not only for today, but 25, 50 years from now? What are you going to do with that inventory? It's so difficult to create heavy industrial uses. I mean, you see it on occasion with the Amazons and the challenges they have, and that's a distribution facility. We were so fortunate that it wasn't that didn't go through, because now we have Economy Spring going into 200,000 square feet. They're tripling in size. These are great manufacturing jobs. We have 3PL Worldwide that's in a couple 100,000 square feet. So the reuse of that building without the density and the types of workforce that, the various types of workforce that it employs is a tremendous asset to have back on full production. Let's see. Oh, and another one we recently did is we were supporting retaining 136 Curtis Street as a heavy industrial use. It wasn't popular, and it was very challenging for the very first Planning and Zoning Commission as their first meeting to have residents actually want residential high density built next to them rather than industrial. But again, when you look at the long-term potential, we don't know what's going to come out in the future. So to have that as inventory is worthwhile for the town, in my opinion. We try to increase work opportunities across all fronts. So when we had a developer who wanted to tear down the Hartford Insurance buildings and put up a mixed-use type venue, we see the value in the office space. We didn't have a tremendous amount of office space when you remove that from there. So the fact that we have fintech companies there and financial companies like Webster Bank and Connecticut Online Computer Corporation and or Center and AmTrust, the pay that's associated with that, with the benefits, is significant, let alone with the tax benefit. Diversification is also very important to us. No one taxpayer represents more than 2 or 3% of our grand list, and that's extremely important. If you recall, when we had Pratt & Whitney. Pratt & Whitney made up over 10% of our grand list at the time. When they left, our town was devastated. Right now, I think it's Eversource that has the 2 to 2.5% each on our grand list. That infrastructure is not going anywhere. If anything, it's just going to get improved. So when we lost the Hartford Insurance buildings, while you feel for the people who may have lost their jobs locally, from a town perspective, we weren't devastated because we still get the taxation on the buildings, and it provided great opportunity now moving forward. One of the best examples I could use for the unique service levels that we offer is Juniper Lighting. Juniper Lighting is a New York ultra high-end lighting manufacturer from Brooklyn. Shant Majarian is the owner, and he was very interested in a building on Water Street, which is a 20,000 square foot mill-style brick building that had American Standard and Florian tools in it. This is such a great example of the multiplier effect associated with economic development and many aspects of economic development. The building had so many challenges. There are 2 buildings on one parcel, cross-parking arrangements. It's in a flood zone. The associated property, not the subject property, had contamination. So even though he's financing his building, the fact that it had association put a delay on lending. When the government shut down, he was doing an SBA loan, that further delayed issues. So try to hold a deal of this magnitude is really difficult. Why this is a premier example is he purchased a building for over $700,000. The town and the state gets conveyance tax for that. He invested $1.3 million more into the building. He's bringing in over 30 jobs from the local area. The $1.3 million invested, a sizable amount of that is local electricians, HVAC, contractors. So that stays within our community, and he's going to grow further from there. And it's an opportunity to bring in other companies. So that is one of the things that we're very proud to change, because if you look at the opposite, if it were vacant or vacant long-term, they deteriorate. Being in a flood zone is extremely challenging. And this is the awesome cooperation of our town. Planning and Zoning did the subdivision and the line lot revision. Everybody really pulled together. The building department, fire department, engineering department approved plans very quickly, got the people in the building, and that's an extensive renovation when you're looking at $1.3 million of such an old building. And then measuring success, there's several ways to measure success. The quick and easy measure is the grand list. I think you have to do a deep dive on that. Sometimes increases in the grand list really don't show the offsetting expenses that are associated with it. That's why we focus on the commercial and especially the industrial development. You're getting your biggest bang for the buck with those types of things. What we look for is business investment and the personal property increases that are associated with business investment. Again, the diversification is also important. You know, Bristol's reliance on ESPN, and I'm not saying we don't, we certainly do. We get the multiplier effect from them. But, you know, to have all your eggs in that one basket can be kind of scary. And also, sometimes that 800-pound gorilla can kind of dictate certain things as well. So we're okay very well with what we're doing. We also have a very strong network with professional realtors and developers and site locators. And for us recently, getting the DECD to extend the Beaton and Corbin grant for $400,000 and trying to keep that going was also a pretty big hit for us. We got the grant about 4 or 5 years ago. We've been trying to hold this deal together. We had a meeting this morning, and it looks like things are finally starting to move. We have a very short timetable. When you get a property that's upside down with over $1.1 million in cleanup, and you have a path to get there, we're very pleased with that from a measurement. Sometimes it doesn't work, but at least to have a path is great. And then it's really funny. Sometimes, you know, our community is really great. People will tell you, you know, whether you're doing a good job or not. And sometimes they're not shy about letting you know, and it's contradictory. Sometimes you'll hear, hey, there's too much development, you know, there's too much traffic, there's too much this. Oh, but by the way, when are we going to get a Christmas tree shop or an Olive Garden? So you sit there, and, you know, it's kind of funny. My favorite is I can't get a parking space downtown. And every time I hear that,
Because they don't want to walk.
I love that. And, you know, you could point out that, you know, oh, there's a parking spot over on Academy Street or over on Riccio Way and stuff, and you get that look, like it's not right in front of Anthony Jack's or Ideal Tavern or any other restaurant. But I remember not too long ago, when the Popular restaurant burned down, and that building area was overgrown grass, and it was around this time in the winter, and there were literally tumbleweeds. And the sign on Gladchuck would sway in the breeze and squeak, and it was just like a ghost town. So when I hear there's not enough parking downtown, that is the best thing, best compliment you can hear, in the sense that people want to be there, and there's so many people there that it's difficult to find a spot. Where we need improvement, in my opinion, is in 2 areas. One is the creation of another industrial park. The Finance Board and the Council have been really great. We have capital improvement money. The difficulty lies in trying to find a parcel that can accommodate it in a financially feasible manner. So we have ways of working with property owners in doing lot allocation basis. We just haven't been successful in getting that. And why I say you know, it's necessary is we get calls from people who we have an opportunity to meet the demand right now if we had the inventory. And we just do not have the inventory, and we're having difficulty trying to create that inventory. So when you see our 3 or 4 industrial parks and they're full and they're growing, like a Sign Pro that came in with 32 or 37 people, and they're literally doubled and, you know, need more space and whatnot, that's all well and good. We also need some more inventory. And again, without controlling land and controlling price, it's a difficult achievement. And, you know, but we continue to work on it, you know. The other aspect is within the marketing area. I substantially increased our request for marketing. In the past, we have been very good in the sense that we didn't need marketing, we didn't have the inventory that additional marketing would propel. The theory that I'm working on now is the economy runs in cycles, and I want to be ahead of the economy. I'm not saying there's going to be a downturn soon or anything like that, but marketing promotes community development as well as economic development, and I want to be a couple years ahead of any curve that comes so that Southington is in the minds of everybody when it comes to dining and recreation destination. And the reason we're focusing on that to start with is we're very fortunate. We have unique attributes. We have Mount Southington with about 90 to 100,000 visitors over a 3-month period in the winter, and in the spring through basically through through the winter season, you have over 700,000 people attending lake compounds. We have Crystal Bees. We have some hotels that could facilitate the traffic, and the idea is to get people to stay a little bit longer and play. And if we can get the recognition that Southington is like tons of fun or something along that line, I want to start it. And the reason I haven't really pushed it in the past is we couldn't get consensus on how we want to go, and we have to have consensus budgeting for what we're trying to do. So you will see a marketing campaign coming. We're going to look to hire at least one, preferably more than one, to really let people know what we all know. And hopefully that helps sustain, the businesses in the future. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Okay, I'll start with Sue.
Is that marketing campaign this 42.9% increase in anticipated new project initiatives?
It is.
Okay. Both lake compounds and the ski area, particularly lake compounds, have gigantic marketing
Correct.
budgets already. I'd prefer not to spend my money marketing them. I'd rather spend the money marketing the smaller businesses that don't have the money to market themselves. I'm all for, the restaurant concept. Even Crystal Bees is pretty small. Mount Southington, yes and no. But lake compounds, it's mostly Bristol, and people who go there don't tend to stay. And they're not going to stay. We aren't going to get them to stay here and come to dinner afterwards. They're eating there. I can't see us putting money into them in a marketing campaign.
Point well taken. They have over a $2 million budget. My point isn't necessarily to market necessarily just them. It's more the stay and play. If we could get someone to come and stay, because they also do the Christmas event, and we have 3 venues in town for haunts. If we could do some sort of stay and play package where you can go to 3 haunts all at once, like Salem has an incredible draw, but the Crystal Bees Evidence of Evil is rated nationally in the top 10. We have Lake Compounds that has a haunted venue, and we have the Haunt on Eden at Mount Southington. So the idea is to not necessarily, our budget isn't going to touch what Lake Compounds. We're trying to accentuate, if someone types in Lake Compounds, and we can populate it on, our Google search to tie into a link from us. And one of our other ideas is basically, like you had said, starting with the downtown. But as many people that are on the committee have as many ideas, and our idea is basically, let's just start. We could start with either TV, and someone says, well, this or that. Our idea is to start.
Okay.
But your point is very well taken.
It's just a lot of money,
It is, but, Kevin?
No, I agree. You definitely need to improve the marketing, because that drives business. You see that everywhere. I think the budget looks great. I just want to thank you for doing a great job and helping the town grow its grand list.
Thank you, sir.
It's done well over the last few years, and it's helped us on a budget end.
Tony?
Yeah, just a quick comment on the marketing campaign. The 15,000 you've asked for, more than last year, is really the only increase in the budget. If you didn't ask for that, you'd be at 0. So, thanks. Thanks for the effort.
Thank you, sir.
In terms of the marketing campaign, though, could you just, I'm aware of it, but could you go over some details for the rest of the board in the sense of how it's going to target social media and how it's going to do that? Could you just say a few words on that?
Yeah, there are, one of the reasons we want to hit more than one company is to take advantage of who might have better response on specific areas. So you might have a production company that does a certain amount of filming and a social media company that can hit queries 7 days a week. And then I would like to copy what West Hartford does, because it's been successful for them, is during the 2 months around the Thanksgiving and Christmas, get pictures, just quick clips of the signage of various businesses and restaurants in your downtown Southington, Lanceville, and Meriden Waterbury Road. We have a number of people who come to our dining experiences from out of town. If we flash that just like West Hartford flashes some fun very quickly. And even those, if we own that production, we can apply it to social media. I didn't really want to get too much into the marketing because the committee hasn't really been definitive yet. And I don't want to steer one way or another. But those are the ideas of capitalizing on social media, a little bit of TV, and that type of venue.
Mark?
Once again, I echo what Kevin said. Obviously, blue's a pretty big cog in our economic development and our grand list issue. And if you look at our grand list, Lou's absolutely right. Look in those categories that aren't residential, and they're all very good too. So all around, obviously, I told Lou personally, and his salary has a little bit of a different number too in there. He's a non-union personnel, so you'll see a little bit of a different number there for compensation purposes. But that's the only change in his budget.
Absolutely. And I've been around since you started, and
Yes,
there's
sir.
a big difference
Yep.
in what's going on. And this board, most of us are well aware of it, and even Tony's well aware of it. So thank you for a good job and a good budget coming into us.
Thank you.
Always a
And I
pleasure
got
to
to
see
tell
you.
you, we have great staff, SEAL, Fire Department,
Right.
Police Department.
It's all teamwork.
Lanyard's great teamwork. So thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
Okay, next one up is Community Services, and page 102, you just got to flip it.
Page 78.
Or 78. Cue card was off a couple of them notches.
Our budget went up big then.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Finance Commissioners, Town Manager, and Finance Director. I'd like to start off with a few of our services. Emergency services is a big part of our office. Placement for people in case of fires, no heat, no electricity, victims of crime. We're often called by many departments, fire, building, the hospital. We're there 24/7 if they need us. We're there. We're trying to make sure that no one that's a resident or in Southington is lost in the system. We make sure people have the necessary food and essentials, and we'll also act with the resident with state and federal programs. To give you an idea, last year we had 23,589 volunteer hours in the office. In recorded, donated, and purchased food, we have 500,000 pounds came into the food pantry. And we sent out last year 750,000 meals. For our office, we have to break down our food package to meals in order to purchase food from Food Share, and it's 1.2 pounds as a meal. We have 1,000 Southington families registered to receive food. Approximately 400 to 500 unduplicated people come every week, unduplicated. During the holidays, we were able to distribute 637 families for Thanksgiving meals and 682 families for Christmas meals. How do we measure our success? Placing people in a shelter at a time of need, making sure residents have enough food, word of mouth. By going to someone's house and realizing they weren't evicted, we were able to help them stay in their home or their apartment. By seeing a child come in and showing us his brand new book pack. By going on a bus and seeing senior citizens or children smiling when they're on their way to camp. Bumping into someone on the streets and listening to them say, "What a difference you made in my life." Having 143 volunteers and a list of volunteers that are waiting to come in. Actually skipped a page. An important part is energy assistance. There is the federal and state energy assistance, and in our office last year, we assisted 399 families apply. 340 were approved, which was a total of $253,000 that went to Southington families. We also helped with emergency needs with energy. We were able to assist 71 families at the cost of $21,104. For rents and mortgage, last year we were able to help 51 families at the cost of $24,080. Our Back to School program, we were able to serve 302 Southington students, grades K through 12, with a new backpack filled with all new supplies and a $20 gift card to purchase other school supplies or shoes. If you were to put a value on that, we put a value at $100 a book bag, so times $302. We're able to assist 15 students to go to summer school at the cost of $4,125. Our budget has increased approximately 4.5% this year. One increase is 17.9% over last year's in temp and seasonal employee, which puts a new person on 2 days a week. The biggest increase was 36.4 for a storage unit. The reason it's so large is we had the Friends of Community Services paying a portion of the monthly fee, which was $300 a month. We're the only person in the building prior to this year. The other tenant was actually paying for the electricity and the heat. The other tenant has moved out, so we now have to cover that cost. So Friends of Community Services has offered to pay the electricity and the heat at the storage unit if the town would pick up the full cost of the storage unit. And that's why the increase is there. And then it was a 9.6 decrease in dues and conference. All of the other items remain the same. And I'd like to say that please note that the funds requested and budgeted are for administrative and operational costs. The costs of consumer services are borne exclusively through generous donations of this community, fundraisers from areas such as the Salvation Army, Friends of Community Services, and other foundations, and many businesses in Southington. All donations are used at 100% consumer client use. No administrative costs are taken out of these donations. I think that's what makes our office truly Southington Community Services. Our staff is 3 full-time staff, 8 seasonal temporary staff, and 143 volunteers. And I estimated how much money it costs our office that we need to raise, and it varies from year to year, anywhere from $141,000 to $278,000, with the condition that 50% additional comes from donations from the community, such as goods. Very proud to be there, and I hope our budget came out okay. I'm not as interesting as the other two, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I'll start down this end again.
I think you're awesome. I mean, I know plenty of people who've used the services and who've donated, and I'm thankful you're there for everyone.
Thank you.
Kevin?
I just want to say, I know you rely a ton on volunteers to help run community services, and I know that you work a lot of hours that you're not even paid.
It's called volunteering for Salvation Army and Friends.
Yeah.
It's not as a town employee.
But so you got 3, so you got yourself, and then the assistant, and then the aide, is that, so there's 3 of you, okay, because I remember, because I did have discussions with you, and it seemed like you're understaffed for all the stuff you do.
Well, all the
But you're
statistics
placing-
are done by volunteers. Our volunteers usually come on weekends,
Yeah.
at night.
But it's hard to rely on volunteers.
It is. It has become, if
They
a
have their own
volunteer,
lives.
they go, you know what, they take vacations, they go to Florida, they go to the islands. They have to pick up their grandchildren, they might not come in. There are many times it is a stress, because they'll call that morning, oh, my grandchild was sick, I just can't come in.
So does this increase in temporary help kind of do it for you, or you were looking for like
Well-
one more new staff?
It's hard, because when you
like
have a
few
temp-
hours a week.
If you have a temp or seasonal or a volunteer, there's not the guarantee they're going to show up. They're not,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
It does
well,
make a
temporary
difference.
or seasonal, that's only part of the year. You do stuff every single day, so you need people there every day, right?
This is when I think, when Jan and I talked, this is a person who's going to be coming in twice a week for the whole year. It isn't, temporary seasonal may be misleading to you. Temporary meaning they're coming in twice a week for the whole 52 weeks. That's what the plan was for this individual.
Okay, so that sounds like it's going to be like a retired person, because it's hard to get a young person that's going to work 2 times, you know.
Well, there's 8 of them now. What's the current schedule you have with the other?
Current age or?
No.
Yeah, no.
We can't ask that question. The current schedule of the other 8
Well, the-
part-timers you have.
They're anywhere from 1 to 2 days a week, and the current age is 70 years and up.
Right. because I've been there a number of times, I noticed there's no young staff because no one's going to work temporary because they're looking for a real job, young people. So when it comes to like a succession plan, you got yourself and you just said you have 2 other staff. You don't have a young person that you're grooming, and you probably could if you had a full-time job, but they're not going to do
Mark won't
temporary.
take offense to that. Her assistant is
We're all starting to get up there.
he's younger than us.
I mean, that's the only problem when I look at the structure of your staff. When I go there, just talking to you, it just seems like there's no one that you're grooming because you're not going to be able to groom somebody. No one's going to want to work 2 times a week. No young individual because they want a full-time job. And I think it would have been nice to have a person that you can groom for and add for the future. Because you rely a lot on volunteers, and it's hard to run a department relying on volunteers.
Well, one of my volunteers volunteers 60 hours a week. If she left, I don't know what I would
Right,
do.
if she gets sick, well, anyone. I mean, a volunteer is a volunteer. They could decide next week, okay, I'm burnt out, I don't want to do it anymore, or, health-wise, they don't want to do it. Because a lot of your volunteers are older, right?
70 and above is a good,
Yeah.
the average.
That's the average?
And it's funny because somebody will come in that's, 25 or 30, and she goes, these groceries are a little heavy. Do you think one of your volunteers in the Bay could bring them out? And they're looking at me, and they go, we're 3 times her age. I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah, I know.
Is that, Kevin? Tony?
Yeah, just along those lines, this is more of a question of the budget thing. I mean, $15,000, $16,000 is fine for what you do. But how do you work and liaise with other charitable organizations in town, for instance, who do similar things, like, say, Bread for Life?
No, I think we do. We work together. Bread for Life actually feeds.
Right.
They make meals. We do the groceries, but we do the other needs. They need help with an electric bill. They need help with
okay.
rent. They want to get on food stamps. They want to get on the state programs. We do all that.
Okay. So,
And if there's a fire, domestic violence, we were called out 2 or 3 times recently by the police, and we make sure that they're put up and that they get all their needs wherever they are.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't have any other comment. I can echo what Kevin is saying. That you got a lot of work down there, and I'm down there enough, like maybe a lot more than anybody else on this board, but there's a lot there and a lot goes out. Definitely appreciate what you do down there and your staff
Thank you.
and the volunteers too, so thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a small department coming up next, one of our small departments.
Yes, one of the
Please.
smaller departments, Mark.
Page 43.
We have Deputy Chief William Palmieri, Chief Jack Daly, Commissioner James Verderam, Chairman, Board of Police Committee. Oh, never.
43 is police. We're looking at police or fire.
Please.
Yeah, it's filled with blood.
There's no cuts.
Hi, James.
Permission, Mr. Chairman, if I could bring you some documents?
Absolutely.
Approach the bar.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. With the board's permission, the document that's stapled together, I was wondering if it would be possible if we could present off this document, starting with the emergency management budget and then working towards the police budget.
It's fine with me.
Okay, the emergency management budget is being submitted with a 6.25% decrease from the previous fiscal year. Again, this budget we use to fund our command vehicle and other emergency management ventures. We've been working to reduce this budget each year to come up with a budget that just will maintain those services. Any questions on emergency management?
Nope.
The safety budget is being presented with no increase for the fiscal year. The safety budget primarily covers the utilities for traffic lights, the service to traffic lights, and the line painting for the roads. Questions on the safety budget? Central dispatch, it's being presented with a 0.75% increase. I believe last year's budget didn't reflect the wages. Most of the increase with the central dispatch, actually all of it is contractual. Any questions on that?
Good?
So that budget, Mark, it's, when I look at the book, it's 4.9, but you must have to take something out of that to get to.
In last year's budget is the, in your contingency line for salaries.
Yeah.
That line gets reduced, and obviously it goes into the salary section, so that's why it's offset. So the same thing will happen next year with the contingency for salaries for the other unions that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Animal control is being submitted with a 2.49% increase. We're looking to increase the overtime line, $1,500, to kind of keep pace with the running three-year average of $12,744. But we'd also like to add 10 hours to have dog adoption process. We currently have 12 volunteers that now assist with the dog pound, and we've been doing a lot of adopting and setting up times, and it's creating a situation where we have to have an animal control officer there. We don't have the overtime funds. We initially thought we would do it twice a year, but at the rate now, we just like to take that 10 hours and spread it out over the year. So when we have dogs, we can run an adoption day, say on a Sunday, have the animal control officer come in, and then have work with the volunteers to do the process. So that's the major increase in there.
Question on that?
Sue, go ahead. Sue has a question.
How would you advertise that?
Right now, we have we have the animal control officer's Facebook, and we also have the volunteer Facebook, and they send everything out through Facebook and Twitter. We've had great responses.
Can you add it like to Southington Talks freely, those other pages that affect Southington residents?
Yep.
If it's allowed, I mean, I don't know if those pages allow it, but if they do, I mean, that reaches a lot of people.
Yep, we can look at that.
Thank you.
The next budget is the police department budget. It's being submitted with a 2.70% increase from previous fiscal year. The main item in the budget is going to be the addition of 2 patrol officers that would go right into the patrol force and focus on responding to calls for service within the community. When we look at what services we provide and how does our function add value to the town, we pride ourselves every year. We come up here and collectively as an organization, we are proud to say we're a full-service department. This approach maintains our primary mission of protecting our residents and people in our community. But we also understand the need to address community-related problems. Starting in the late 70s, moving into the early 80s, the police response to community problems started to increase. Over time, different groups and community leaders realized that the police department was more than just a responding unit to bring order to chaos. We were out in the field. We had a lot of insight. We understood what the problems were. So slowly, partnerships developed between the police department and different service groups, which over time developed a need for a police department to become a major stakeholder in the community. We provide a wide range of public service, which includes response to crimes, but also we'll sit with a mother-son, mother-daughter, and talk about behavioral issues, because it's the complete package. Without that, if we don't do that and we look at it as well, it's not really at a violation at this time. I can guarantee you 3 or 4 months later, we may be responding to a more serious crime. So if we can provide some guidance initially, that makes us all better and adds for a better community. The value added to the town by using a full-service approach is we may not have all the answers, but residents know if they have questions, we will work with them to try and find the answer, and if we can't, we'll point them in the direction, and that is the #1 priority with a full-service approach. Wanted to showcase some of our unique services that they felt the Board of Finance and the public would benefit from knowing. Our primary first responder duties, that goes without saying, but our community outreach, organizationally, our partnerships with the community service, the Bread for Life, to assist people or family in needs, the Board of Education, when we get involved with school security, risky behavior, and student mentoring, the Hartford Healthcare and the STEPS Coalition, looking at substance abuse, misuse for both children and adults. Those 4 areas we're very proud of, and we feel by being a large stakeholder in it, it makes the community a safer and better place. So how do we measure organizational success? We're currently evaluating this. We use department feedback. We have monthly supervisor meetings. We're working on state accreditation. We look at feedback from citizens. We review complaints to see how we can do things better. We also look at feedback from our partners, and we work on a continuous improvement model. So we try to improve by getting as much data as far as how our services are either interpreted or perceived, and adjust them accordingly. The next question is, what is our budget request? And again, it's a 2.7% increase over last year. And what we wanted to cover real quickly was the fact that the police department does generate some revenue. In fiscal year 2018, 2019, we generated $228,000 worth of revenue. We also explore grants to over in excess of $114,000, and the grants either help fund current initiatives or help us get money back from equipment purchases. The 2 officers would bring us up to 70 total staff. So when we look at total staff, we wanted to look at 5 areas. One was the overall growth of the town, overtime impact, a per capita review, patrol division workload-based approach, and a flexible minimum staffing approach. So when we look at the town growth, the census between 2009 and 2018 shows a 3.68% growth overall in town. We are the 23rd largest community in Connecticut. I have 169 towns. Our property tax bills have increased 1.5% since 2014, looking at 2014 through 2018. Our grand list continues to improve, continues to grow. And so I think we can all agree that Southington is not the same town it was 10 years ago. Looking at overtime, we believe when looking at overtime, we have the ability to possibly reduce our overtime by approximately $52,000. Overtime is very fluid. It all depends on our staffing. It depends on unanticipated events. We currently have a running average of a little over $508,000 in overtime. but we've also had the ability to work within our budget through workman's comp to have extra to end up transferring to cover the cost of overtime during the year. Like again, now we're navigating, we have 4 people in the academy, so we have 4 vacancies, but we are confident, we feel we can decrease overtime by $52,000. When we look at per capita, the FBI produces a report which talks about the number of full-time police officers versus residents per 100,000. So what we're trying to do tonight is we're trying to paint a picture of reasonableness. We're not going to look at any one thing and hang our hats and say, well, if we have this amount of police officers, we're going to be a better police department. But we want to look at what some of the data and benchmarks out there say and compare ourselves to them. So when you look at the 2018 report, for population of cities between 25,000 and 49,000, the New England area was 1.9, the Mid-Atlantic area was 1.8, the Northeast region was 1.8, so we have an average of about 1.83. We currently sit at 1.5 per 1,000 residents, so we're about 0.3% below the average. So we took that per capita and we looked at other communities. We said, how do we fare against our bordering towns? When we look at our bordering towns, including Wolcott, Cheshire, Bristol, Berlin, and New Britain, Southington is the lowest per capita police department compared to our bordering communities. So we also looked at what we called communities that were similar in our size, similar in our services we provide. So we extended that to cities like Wallingford, Grottown, Glastonbury, Newington, Vernon, Windsor, Wethersfield, and Farmington. And when we look at the information there, we are the lowest per capita community again. Our request for 2 additional officers, if approved, would bring our per capita number up to 1.6. We also looked at index crime. We've had some questions in the past about NIBRS information, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. And this is a way all law enforcement across the United States can collect information on crime. The data includes offenses, victims, offenders, property, everything that goes into the investigation and completion of a criminal crime. When looking at the NIBRS data, the FBI discourages making comparisons as a way of measuring law enforcement effectiveness. It's not about how effective we are, but to ignore it as far as calls for service or what's going on in our community directly does link to the quality of life within the community. So when we look at index offenses and we include the per capita, we again we had the 3rd highest index crime in 2018 of bordering communities and the lowest per capita staffing. When we look at our similar communities, we again had the 3rd highest index crime and the lowest per capita staffing. The next area that we looked at was looking at our workload versus calls for service. We had a formula that we could use that was instituted by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It looks at calls for service, it looks at average time to complete calls for service, it looks at all the police activities, whether you're on a meal break or you're handling calls for service. You put it into certain parameters, and it gives you a rough summary of how many officers you should have assigned to your patrol force. Using that, it returned a value of 50 officers. Now, that would be an increase of 12. We're not here asking for 12. And again, that is just one factor that we looked at. And then in the end, we started to look at calls for service. And calls for service can fluctuate. But what we focused on with this, for this presentation was the complexity of the calls and how policing has changed over the years. And we looked at domestic violence, family disputes, and mental health calls, which are emotionally disturbed persons, or we refer to them as EDPs. Legislation has passed with the investigation of domestic violence investigations as far as there's certain safety things now we have to do that is in the best interest of the victim, and quite frankly, should have been being done a long time ago. But it has also added time to the investigation, because now we're required to do a more complete, more thorough investigation. We also have to look at past history, maybe past history of violence that hasn't been reported. So we looked at calendar year 2017, 2018, and 2019 for domestic violence. Although we had small increases, 110 incidents in 17, 111 incidents in 18, and 130 incidents in 2019. Our officers were spending an average of, in 17, roughly 4.72 hours on scene with 3.5 units there. And that stayed pretty consistent from the 3 years. So we're looking at more complex calls now. We have more requirements, so it's taking more services off the road. The last area that we looked at was basically a minimum flexible staffing approach, and we're not going to go over staffing numbers, but the basic formula behind it is, let's say for the sake of discussion, we had an officer that worked 1,500 hours. When you look at their average leave time, they have 500 hours off a year. You would turn around and that would leave you with 1,000 hours. So if we had to staff a position full-time, it would come out, you would need like 1.5 officers to fill that position. Looking at that area, we came out with a number of 46 officers assigned to the patrol division. So basically, in conclusion, when you look at all these areas, our request of 2 officers is reasonable, and the information in the budget supports it, and we would hope you would consider it. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
We'll start with Sue first.
I have done. Thank you very much. I appreciate your services.
Kevin?
No, I think you guys do a great job. The only thing I look at is I see the index totals. I guess I should move to another town.
No, but you have to understand that
This town is very
it's-
safe.
yes.
I'm just joking.
It's all relative, and it's more about the complexity of what goes on.
Yeah. No, you guys do a great job. I support the 2 police officers.
Tony?
Yeah, when was the last time you actually added new officers? I mean, not hired them, but actually added, to the staff?
Let's see, 2010?
Can't remember, that's what's sad.
No, when we reorganized, we did some things, but we never went up officers. We did add a master sergeant, this is the first in a while that we're actually putting the boots on the ground. Could have been 9, 10.
Okay. So it's been...
Mr. Weissel was here.
Oh, so it's been 10 years or so. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I
Okay.
remember that.
10 years, great.
It was a while.
Okay. What would happen, this is a hypothetical question, what would happen if you couldn't hire them this year, you hired them next year? What would happen, in your view, to the town? What would be the effect? Obviously, the overtime would have to be kicked up 52 grand, right? What else would... Well,
And again, it would be...
Judging by the cut you made in the budget is what I was going to...
If we weren't to get the officers in this budget cycle, we would continue to do the best we can with what we have. I mean, it's our mission to deliver services, and we're committed to it. We just think we're at a point now where we really need the officers now, based on the way things are changing. I mean, if we look in the news, you talk about we're dealing with people now. The first questions that they're asking is, what did the officers do to de-escalate? Did they take time? Did they talk to the people?
Yeah.
So you're taking calls that maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, we would get to the scene, we'd run in the house, we'd start talking to the person, and now that's actually adding to the problem, because you're adding so much mental health type of issues into the call. And, the officers now, quite frankly, are behind the 8 ball, because their decisions are getting, criticized from someone's office when they're not there on the scene. But, not to get them, if we don't get them, we drive on. But I just think that the men and women that work here in the police department have done a great job. We are always there for people. I think this is a reasonable request. I honestly don't believe there's a reason not to give them to us.
Okay.
Plus, if you don't give them, then you're looking at next year, there's another 23 weeks and a 12-week period of hiring. Because when we hire them, then they go to the academy for 23
And the training,
weeks
yeah.
and 12 weeks of field training, so you're just kicking the can further down the road.
So you would like to hire essentially new officers, not officers from other towns that you don't have to train?
We would prefer to hire certified officers.
Okay.
But the pool of certified officers, we have to find people that are.
Yeah, understood.
Southern-
Oh, yeah, understood. Thanks very much, Deputy Chief. I would comment that the justification for hiring was very detailed, and I'd like to compliment you on that. Thanks.
Well, we have a good team. I mean, the compliments, like I say, go, I appreciate that, the chief appreciates, but it's the officers that are on the street that are actually doing the job that gives us the chance to present.
Understood.
I mean, the only other comment I'd like to make too, with the increase in businesses that keep coming into our town and the new developments, those are two other reasons why you probably need a few more police officers.
Mark,
I just
please.
wanted to comment something that you've heard me say before. I look at several different things, obviously infrastructure and staffing. Last year, we looked at the fire department for staffing. This year, I promised that I'd be looking at PD and public works. I concentrated on PD this year. Sat down with both the chief and the deputy chief for many conversations, and these numbers that Billy went over went with me also. I don't like to be the town in our region with the least amount of officers per capita, and I think that we'll look at this again, another cycle. But as I mentioned before, I want to look at a 3 or 4 year cycle with each department of the key departments that need staffing. Next year, as I told you already, I'm looking at Public Works, Highway, Parks next year. But I think in this particular case, you know enough to know that I don't put staffing in there unless I think it's important for the town. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, and Deputy Chief, and Commissioner. Thank you. And also, I would be in big trouble here, but Sandy, don't shut that off for a second. The chairman was unable to make it due to John Larry, to another commitment. And also, Joe Labiniak had a commitment that he wasn't here, but they're going to check the tape and et cetera. But we're all set with them, but I forgot to start that off tonight, so. And thank the board here for helping me and the town manager and Amelia, so it all
Thanks
went
for
well.
running it, Ed. Did a great job.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Eddie,
you all.
can I see your
Thanks.
schedule, please, as to what's